You're in the room for 6, 8, 10 hours at a time. You want it to look nice. You want it to be vibey. When I put in the GIK treatments, it was like flipping a switch. Don't spend money on plugins till your room is great, until your speakers are great.
What's up, guys? It's Dylan here from GIK Acoustics. I'm sitting down today with Jonathan Wyman of thissoundsgood.com to talk about his new home studio. Jonathan is a mixer, producer, and engineer who just worked on an album that hit the top of the Billboard. Thanks for sitting down with me, Jonathan. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do?
I'm a mixer, producer, engineer.
And you also play music, right?
Yeah, I mean, not as much as I'd like to these days, because the mixing and the producing sort of takes most of my energy and time, but I definitely played on a bunch of stuff that I've produced and try to play for fun when I can, but there's not a whole lot of free time for that anymore.
So what are some of the skills that you need to be a good mixing artist?
Obviously good ears are the first requirement, being able to hear pretty well. But aside from that, patience and understanding. And if I'm doing a mix, again, like it's anywhere from 4 to 10 hours on it, this is a song that an artist has spent lots and lots of time on. You got to be able to understand where they're coming from.
So you just moved studios, you had a professional studio, now you're working from home, right?
It's more just a function of the pandemic. I've got a couple of health things that make me, not be the best candidate to contract COVID. So when everything hit, I sort of had to put a pause on going in and being in the studio, because that's what probably 75% of my work was being in the room with people all the time. And I basically had to put a pause on that. And because the studio I worked out of, there are other engineers who work there, I've sort of had to just move everything that I'm doing to home. And at first it was a kind of like an emergency, in the middle of March, just like, all right, well, I guess I'm working here now. And then sort of grew into it more and accepted it more and decided to really make a go of it. And that's why I called up James Lindenschmidt at GIK and got this setup underway.
So what's it been like transitioning to that new space?
It's definitely a home studio. It's definitely like a temporary thing as far as like actual career goes, but it's letting me keep up with my work. It's letting me earn a living and do it until it's, safe for me to be back in the room with people again.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about the room? So like what strategies and products did you use to treat it, that kind of thing?
Well, okay, so the room is really small. My wife and I, probably 6 years ago, we bought a house right in downtown Portland, Maine. And it's a beautiful house. It was built in 1897, brick, single-family home, 2 stories, but because it was built in 1897, there are certain challenges. I think I'm going to be taking pictures to show you for a B-roll, but there's like a chimney that goes straight up through the middle of the room. There's not a lot of symmetry. The room itself is, it's about 100 square feet, so it's small. As far as strategy goes, I mean, a lot of it, if not all of it, is due to the expertise of James Lindenschmidt. And we used the software room modeler that you guys have online, and just handed designs back and forth and ideas. And what we landed on is probably 99% of Jim's original design.
What's the experience been like working in your professional studio versus working in your home studio?
Yeah, I mean, everything. At the very beginning, before I did any treatment, it was literally just a drywall room with a carpet floor. The ceilings are kind of tall. They're almost 10 feet, so I got that going for me. But it was just it wasn't quite empty because we had been using it to store stuff since we had moved in. But that was the first shock, was being in a completely untreated room after spending 11 years in a really great sounding room. It's it's funny. You're always working. So even if it's, 10 o'clock at night and like sometimes somebody will text me and they'll want a mix revision, I'll be like, well, I can just go do it now and walk upstairs and work. And I find I take very few, if any, like full days off when there's a studio in the house. I can always go do something. And on the other side of the coin, there's all the other things at home, taking care of the dog, doing the dishes, cooking dinner, all these things that we're all going through working from home in quarantine, but sort of maintaining and balancing the home life and the things that go on around the house.
So now that you've got your room set up and you've got it treated and everything, how do you think it compares to your professional studio? Is it comparable? Is it nicer? Is it not as nice?
I'm not going to say it's not as nice, because you're talking about the room is less than half the size of my last control room. So it's just there's some things that are inherent. And the last control room was purpose built to be a control room. It doesn't have doors in every corner that prevent me from treating the wall-to-wall corners. And it doesn't have, like I said, this chimney outcropping in the front wall was a total pain in the neck. But that being said, when I put in the GIK treatments, it was like flipping a switch. It was literally, I was just cursing myself for not doing it sooner. And I realized I sound like I'm being, an evangelist about it, but like being in a great sounding room has always been so important to me, and something I really have always strived for. So to be able to do it at home and have, like, the first mix I did with the stuff up, I just listened on the dog walk the next morning in iPod earbuds, earphones, whatever they call them. It was great. There were a couple of things I wanted to tweak, but it wasn't like the previous 6 months of mixing in an untreated room where the bass was just a moving target, and I was constantly revising and checking and listening in the car. I was just like instantly way more confident.
How important is the visual aesthetic of your acoustic treatments? That it not only sound good, but look good?
You're in the room for 6, 8, 10 hours at a time. You want it to look nice. You want it to be vibey. I opted for I got the Guilford of Maine fabric on the monster traps, and I think it's really worth it. I think it looks really great. I did all the lights. You can see I've got the Philips Hue light bulbs that you can change colors. But I think having a comfy, fun to be in room, it makes you want to be in there. It makes you want to go get work done.
So why choose GIK over other acoustic products?
I loved the range of products in the GIK line because, again, this room has some irregularities, some asymmetries. There's some things that I didn't want to get into a whole lot. I didn't get any custom sizes, but I did get some of the, stock sizes that were half width for some of the corners and for the ceiling to wall corners up there. So having the ability to do that, and again, like how cool the Alpha 6s look. In addition to doing a great job, they look great.
Do you have any advice for anyone trying to get into mixing?
At the risk of playing to my audience, treat your room. Have the best sounding room and the best monitors you can afford if you really want to do mixing. And I said best monitors you can afford, and that might be wrong. Just monitors that you know and love. Like, don't skimp on monitors. Get monitors that really work for you and work in your room. From there, having treatment in a room, especially if you're going to be at home like me, it's there always are going to be compromises. It's never going to be perfect, but you'll learn those compromises pretty quickly. What I try to explain to people about room acoustics, let's face it, when somebody's got, let's say, $10,000 to outfit a home studio, and they want to get a computer and they want to get an audio interface and they want to get some microphones, acoustic treatment tends to be sort of low on the priorities list. And I always try to tell people, make sure you've got your room right, because who cares if you have super nice speakers if you've got a room that's causing 12 decibel dips at 100 hertz and you can't judge the bass response. having a good, even sounding room that I trust really makes me confident. It makes me able to make moves, be it EQ or level, just overall mixing, where I can go with my gut. I can hear something and react to it and not have to second guess myself and say, oh wait, the bass is always a little bit loud on that particular note, so I shouldn't, adjust the bass there. I should let it go. I don't have to second guess myself like that. I don't have to waste the mental energy, and I can just focus on mixing. I mean, I use plugins every day. I still spend money on plugins, but don't spend money on plugins till your room is great, until your speakers are great,
So you recently worked on an album with the Pretty Reckless that hit the top of the charts. What was that like?
Yeah, it was on the Billboard mainstream rock charts. We hit #1 over the summer, and they released the end of year mainstream rock charts, and it was #4. Obviously, the Pretty Reckless was a huge deal. And we spent almost a full year making that record. So that was great. But most of my work has been largely independent stuff that, I get disparaging and say that nobody ever hears it. But I got a phone call a couple of weeks ago from a guy who's a fairly well-known songwriter, music director guy, and he had heard a record. He had been given a record. I think he was like touring with the band in like 2003, and unearthed this record in his CD collection, and what, like, I was the first person he could get in touch with, and wanted to know what the band was still doing, what they were up to. So every now and again, something you do ends up getting legs, and somebody ends up hearing it.
So that's all I brought today. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
I'm super grateful for you guys reaching out to me, and obviously super grateful for James Lindenschmidt's advice and help setting this whole thing up. It really, you always worry about it. You're spending all this dough and spending all this time setting it up, and your worst fear is that you do it, and you're like, it kind of makes a difference. This was not kind of at all. It was just instantly sounded better and gave me the confidence to do a mix well.
Thank you, Jonathan, for sitting down with us today. And if you would like free advice for your acoustic treatment, visit GIK-acoustics.com, where you can find tons of useful tools, articles, and videos, as well as our free acoustic advice forum, where you can get a customized consultation specifically for your room.